The overseas briefing today begins in Israel. A bomb attached to a tanker truck exploded at the country's largest fuel depot north of Tel Aviv. It set off a fire. It was put out immediately. The Israeli embassy in Paris was destroyed by a fire today. Police believe the most likely cause was an electrical fault. No one was inside at the time. A very frail Pope John Paul arrived in Bulgaria today. On his first visit there, the Pope, who was 82 and sounding short of breath, had an aide read most of his speech. In northern Afghanistan, another 500 fighters were released from the overcrowded prison we reported on earlier this week. The U.S. says it has already removed all the prisoners that it believes are important. As we said at the beginning of the broadcast, President Bush is in Russia this evening for a summit meeting tomorrow with President Putin. The relationship between the two countries has changed quite dramatically since the first President Bush was there. Still, a recent poll of Russians found that only 25% regard the United States as a friendly nation. An ABC News poll finds that 62% of Americans think the Russians are friendly. ABC's Claire Shipman used to live in Russia, and she reports tonight that a Russian leader is always news.
Vladimir Putin sharing traditional marinated mushrooms with Russian villagers. At times, his enormous popularity seems to catch even him by surprise. When Putin took office 2 years ago, many in the West saw him as little more than an ex-KGB thug. Today, despite a 70% approval rating, he remains something of a puzzle, a man of contrasts. It turns out he has a remarkable common touch, grieving with victims of a terrorist bombing, begging for a bite of a little boy's ice cream. He is also right at home with all the trappings and power of a czar. He's supported market reforms, the economy is improving, and he's been able, for the most part, to pay wages and pensions on time. But there is this.
Every democratic institution in Russia today is weaker than it was 2 years ago when Putin came to power. He says the right things, but he does the wrong things.
Putin has run the independent media out of business, weakened the parliament, and used the war on terror to justify a brutal war in Chechnya. He openly courts Iran and North Korea, at the same time pursuing a firm friendship with the United States. In the end, Putin may not be all that different from some of the other leaders who've ruled from behind the Kremlin walls. He might be called an authoritarian reformer. What's interesting is that the United States, which usually prefers to cast Russian leaders as either good or bad, seems willing to accept a more complex view of this man. And Russians seem willing to trade some liberties for stability. They like a strong leader who flies in a fighter plane over Chechnya and shows off his judo. In fact, a Soviet-style Putin cult is blooming, complete with a board game called The Manager in his honor. He says he doesn't like the fawning, but then again, when the press here offered a more critical view, Vladimir Putin shut them down. Claire Shipman, ABC News, Moscow.
When we come back, the final item in our broadcast tonight, all that water that Americans are supposed to drink, it may be the bottling companies who benefit the most.